عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Brothers and sisters, we continue our book Riyadh Saliheen by Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi. We are on the 55th chapter of the book, and the chapter is with regards to leading a life of excellence, a virtue of simple life, a life that does not only focus upon running behind this world. And the hadith for tonight is one Anas radiyallahu anhu anna Nabiya sallallahu alayhi wa sallam قال اللهم لا عيش إلا عيش الآخرة رواه Al-Bukhari and Muslim or كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. The hadith is reported by Anas bin Malik radiyallahu anhu, and Anas radiyallahu anhu reports that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, "O Allah, there is no true life but the life of the hereafter." And one thing before we get into a little bit more details to this hadith, one of the things to remember, brothers and sisters, from the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that amongst the many things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave His Habib, His beloved, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one was that he was Jawami'atul Kalim. He was a man of comprehensive speech. He would say few words, but it would mean an ocean of information. Meaning this was amongst the mu'jizat and the miracles of the Prophet ﷺ, that he would say few things, but he would have ocean of information inside. So in this particular saying, the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Allahumma la aisha illa aisha al-akhirah." He said, "O Allah, there is no true life but the life of the hereafter." Now, with regards to this particular statement, the scholars have mentioned two scenarios that are attached to this saying of the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that there are two moments that the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam have said or might have said this. So the first part, inshallah, we'll discuss that in more detail in the coming weeks in the hadith of Jabir radiyallahu anhu. But this particular saying of the Prophet ﷺ, according to one of the narrations and tradition, was at the time when the famous Battle of Trenches was happening. As we know that, which is known as Ghazwa Khandaq, the Battle of Trench that took place in the 5th year of the migration of the Prophet ﷺ. It was a time extremely difficult for the believers. The Muslims had to dig these trenches to protect themselves from a huge army that was anticipated in coming towards Medina. It was moments and times of hunger and thirst. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'in themselves said that we saw stones tied to the stomach of the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam because of extreme hunger. For days that he had nothing to eat, and the stone had put enough pressure on his stomach that it wouldn't cause the pangs of hunger inside of him. So he had stones tied to himself. And at that moment, the Sahaba radiallahu anhu majma'in came across a boulder in the trench that they were not able to break. So they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they said, "O Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is extremely difficult, extremely strenuous upon us that we're not able to break this." So the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took one of the tools that he had, and the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam struck it once, and a spark came. And the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "I can see the kingdoms of Qaisar and Isra, the Romans and the Persians." And the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam struck it again, and he saw sparks, and he said, "I see Islam far distance," and finally it struck open into pieces. And the rock broke at the time of Khandaq. And the Sahaba radiallahu anhu ajma'in, while looking at their own condition, they were hungry, they were thirsty, they saw the rock tied to the stomach of the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and with all love and respect they said, "Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for Qaisar and Qisra, the Romans and the Persians, there is dunya, there is so much affluence, there is so much that they have. And I see and we see your condition, Ya Rasulullah, that you have nothing to eat, barely anything to cover, and you see the sparks coming from this." So while hearing Sahaba radiallahu anhu ajma'in say this, the Nabi of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the moment of Khandaq said to the Sahaba, "O my Sahaba, Allahumma la aisha illa aisha al-akhirah." "O Allah, there is no true life of this world, but the true life is the life of akhirah." Meaning reminding Sahaba that irrespective of what you have in dunya will pass, but if your akhirat is not made, then there is nothing that you have. Meaning for us, Allah has kept akhirah. So in the moments when the Sahabas radiallahu anhu, the greatest human beings, their minds diverted towards the affluence of dunya for the people. Not that they were, na'udzubillah, hoping and wishing and they were wanting it, but Rasulullah always took the mizaj and the minds of Sahaba from dunya to akhirah. Keep akhirah in front of you. So he said, on the moment of Khandaq, when the hunger and thirst was there, and the Sahaba mentioned Qaisar and Qisra, the Romans and Persian, the Nabi of Allah said, Allahumma la aisha illa aisha al-akhirah. The life of this dunya is not the real life. Second occasion, I'll conclude with this. The second occasion that the Ruwat have mentioned that this hadith might have been said was at the time of Hajjatul Wida, the farewell Hajj of Rasulullah ﷺ. When the Nabi of Allah ﷺ performed this Hajj, only performed one Hajj in his life. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring us with khair and afiyah and invite us towards his house in the city of the Prophet ﷺ. So when the Nabi of Allah ﷺ had finished his Hajj, he saw around him large crowds of Muslims, a crowd that was never seen before, almost 124,000 Sahaba. And then at that moment, when he saw a large crowd of people, Muslims around him, the Nabi of Allah warned them against becoming proud and overjoyed with their strength and their power, because there were so many of them. So Rasulullah warned them that do not become proud or overjoyed with your strength and your power. The grandeur and the majesty is only of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that will ever last. Nothing lasts except for the jalal and the might of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is nothing that is everlasting except for the name of Allah. So Rasulullah reminded the Sahaba at that moment that irrespective of your power and your strength and all that you have, the real life is the life of akhirah. Do not become engaged in dunya to the extent that you forget your preparation for akhirah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us ability and tawfiq to also prepare for akhirah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from amongst those people that can keep akhirah in front of them, inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdi.